Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto is the Perfect Assassin, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Choji and Liana offered next watch to make sure that they could get the information they wanted out of Sasuke the moment he woke up. Right now he seemed to be sleeping peacefully. Liana knocked her head against his shoulder and he smiled before wrapping his arm around her waist and pulling her close. "What time is it?" she mumbled with exhaustion. 11:58. He rested his head on top of hers and stroked her hair as her breathing slowed to an even pace and her eyes slipped slowly closed. "Hey," he nudged her gently so she opened her eyes again. "Don't fall asleep, sweetheart." She smiled with her sleepy expression as she snuggled closer to him and slipping into his lap. "Who says I was falling asleep?" He smiled back at her as he smoothed her hair behind her ears. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled herself closer. Leaning in, they felt each other's breath warm against their faces. A low pained moan interrupted their moment and they pulled away, their faces flushed. They tried to slow their panting so they could hear other things. The low moan came again, filled with more agony. The couple turned to the sound and their eyes grew wide at the sight of the young Uchiha, pale and shaking. Liana quickly checked the time and placed her hand on the pale man's forehead before quickly retracting it. She let out a hiss and shook her hand. "He's like an open flame." Choji moved quickly, grabbing a bag and filling it with ice along with a glass of water and a towel. "What time is it?" Passing off the ice bag and stepped aside to watch her slowly position and reposition the unstable bag on the Uchiha's forehead. "It's 12:02. Why? Well, if Shikamaru was right, haha. If he was right. These visions should come around 12 at night." She raised one of her eyebrows slowly. "What? I know. It's so like the movies. You knew that and didn't bother to mention it earlier." He scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "Well, you know there is a great explanation to this, I just need to think of it." Sasuke moaned loudly and began to thrash, trying to separate himself from whatever was holding him to the darkness. His skin grew into a pallid transparent grayish color and his breathing rapid and hollow. Choji grabbed his friend's wrist and counted the pulse like he was taught by Sakura. Satisfied with his results, he gently laid the wrist back on the bed and was in shock as it instantaneously tensed when his hand no longer held it. Gripping the bed until the couple began to hear the poor metal creature groan in the strain as the pained Uchiha's agony increased as he slipped deeper into the vision. Sasuke's vision. Something feels different this time, but nothing appears different. Sasuke was again in Naruto's mind and using his eyes, but something was off about this vision. The heated rock raged at his feet, but his flesh showed no reaction. The poisonous gases that he was breathing threatened his lungs as he hacked away. "Who's there? What is happening to me?" Naruto released another stream of violent coughing and tried to cover his mouth but found that his arm was bound by some sort of rope. He gave it a tug and the coarse binding bit him back. He took a deep breath and practically ripped his arm out of his socket before stopping to allow it to recover. Freaking strong rope. Though Naruto's body kept moving, panting and coughing, Sasuke stopped all other thoughts. A few thoughts were not his. Naruto was conscious and able to think for himself in this vision. Sasuke's apartment, Choji's POV. Liana and I were sitting stark still as Sasuke's body would go tense and release on an irregular basis. Shortly after Liana put the ice pack to his head, he broke out into a sweat. It wasn't hot this time of year and Sasuke was giving any signs of nervousness, so we put our guard up higher and waited for another sign. And another came. All right. Sasuke suddenly started coughing away like he was choking on something that wasn't really there and lifted his arm in a way to try and staunch the, what must have been painful, noises, but stopped part of the way there and paused. Lurching violently, he tried to pull his arm away from an invisible force, but the appendage wouldn't move. The coughing quieted as his expression went to unreadable and I nudged Liana and mumbled to her to go get the others. "They aren't going to like being woken up at this hour," she said, voice guarded, as she made her way to the door. "They have to come." I paused for just a moment. "At least get Shikamaru and Sakura." She nodded and leapt of the railing of Sasuke's balcony. We all understand why Sasuke moved away from his old home. What with all the memories that were gathering dust there, we really did understand. But what stumps even Shikamaru, incredible feat, well done Sasuke, is why he got the apartment with the stinkin' balcony. I went along this tangent until something flickered and drew my eye back to my immobile friend. The unreadable expression had once again changed. He was confused. Something about the way he was tensed in a position of a cat that had heard a bark close enough to make it freeze in place. He mumbled something a few times and I leaned in closer, hoping to at least catch a few words. I succeeded. He's here. Didn't make much sense to me. I'm here too. Still didn't make much sense. Was Uchiha speaking to Naruto, or was he speaking for Naruto to someone else, etc.? The touch of a warm hand on my shoulder shot me to the ceiling and a soft feminine giggle came from Spot. You're so troublesome, Choji. Shikamaru. Yaritz, he yawned loud and long. Me. I laughed internally. It was Shikamaru all right. Choji. What's wrong? What happened to my Sasuke-kun? Poor Sakura, she had obviously been getting no sleep tonight. She had argued to virtually no end when Shikamaru told her she shouldn't be on watch for Sasuke and instead get some sleep. Boy, when he said that, she practically ripped his pineapple-topped head off. Ino and Hinata managed to hold her back, but they were straining to do it. Even when Ten, Temari, and Liana tried to help, Sakura kept slowly gaining ground on Shikamaru. It was funny, it got Sai to laugh, another impressive feat, but Sasuke stopped her before she got to our genius. He got up from the tree he was sitting against and completely caught her off guard. She liked it, but now when he was in some torturous dreamland and she wasn't allowed to be here for him until now, then it made perfect sense that she was in a funk. Sasuke's vision, Sasuke's POV, obviously. He was here. He was awake and was thinking now, could I talk to him? Can he hear me like I can hear him? Only one way to find out, Naruto. I felt his body go tense and a sharp pain went through his side, and the pain was shared by me. His normally energized, uplifting voice was raspy and quiet. That voice? I know that voice. Yes, Naruto. It's me, Sasuke. His mind snapped to clear attention. Can you hear my thoughts? Yes. Is it easier on you? Yeah, it's probably not good to talk with my voice in the condition it's in, that and she might hear me. An emotion rippled from Naruto's heart. I knew it well before I learned the whole truth about my search brother, and another that Naruto and I didn't know well before we were split apart from Konoha. Fear. Naruto, where are you? We need to come and get you out of there. His body stiffened and he raised his head, allowing me to get a view of the, seemingly, unending cavern with lava. Cliché. Yeah, cavern great. But where are you? I'm not going to tell you, Sasuke. His tone was a new one too, and his response on top of this pissed me off. Idiot. Do you want to stay there for an eternity? No, but you guys will end up being stuck here too. His inner voice was soft and his mind was shying away from my yells. I mentally kicked myself. He was being beaten by some dumb lady, and here I was screaming at him like he was in shape to take it, like he was before he was when we were Cell 7. He must have felt my mind wander and the pang of sadness that went through me, because he answered with a little more of the old Naruto that I remembered. This lady can't keep me here forever. Right. Right, Naruto, but she's planning on killing me. Single quote, comma, single quote. I'm not a dumb kid anymore, Sasuke. The fox doesn't make me immortal, you know. I grew up too. Great. Just per FECT. He was pretty good at getting how he felt out to people when he wanted to, but I wasn't. Even when I really wanted to. You didn't expect me to stay the same stupid, pranking, obnoxious, loud-mouthed. Your loudmouthness made up for my, I'm too good for the world, silence, that shut him up. Now it was my turn to try and tell him about how I felt. You did pranks to get attention and people called you stupid for them, but they never saw you fight like Kakashi. Pang of sadness, Sakura, pang. And I did. Ow. I just hurt him in a good way, so I kept going. Your loud-mouthed attitude was your confidence, and it boosted the team's morale through roof. No, it didn't. Yeah, think back to when Ino had taken over Sakura's mind. She said your loud voice helped her fight Ino out, even if it was a tie in the end. You had influenced Naruto. It had gone quiet and I felt something cold running down his cheeks. I won't die here, Sasuke. I promise I won't die here. Besides, you haven't met Narelle. I could see his classic smile as the vision was fading, and Naruto knew it, but my point had been made. Our brotherly bond had finally shown itself and lent itself to my words beautifully. I had made my search brother cry. Sasuke's apartment. Tears were drizzling down Sasuke's face, but a small smile was there also. All expressions of pain were lost in this one expression. His friends watched with awe as what little color he had returned to him, and his eyes flicker slightly. He had been mumbling earlier, but his words were inaudible. It didn't matter to them, he would let them know what had happened once he was recovered from the vision. Sasuke-kun. Sakura stroked back his raven black hair and kissed him lightly on the forehead. Please wake up. Her whispers were in a pleading tone, a tone she would never normally take. Come back to me now, Sasuke. She slowly wiped away an icy tear from his face before his hand suddenly stopped her. Please don't. His voice came to a shock to everyone, hoarse and raspy. Why not? She watched his stand to his feet, not shaking, not weak. Slowly he turned to face her with a strange, far-off look as he slowly formed his answer. Because Sakura-chan, he cupped her face and kissed her lightly, there is nobody there to wipe away Naruto's tears. Every breath I took was a blaring siren of agony as the chemicals in the air sank their claws into my lungs. I could feel my heart straining to keep an even beat and pulse my slowing blood. There's nothing left for me, the deeper parts of my mind told me otherwise, but that voice was hoarse and quiet like my real one. Slowly allowing darkness to rock me to sleep, slowly, lie. A strange wave of weight was thrust upon his shackled being. As the soles of his feet slammed the superheated ground, he was surprised to feel nothing. Surprised. Hadn't he gotten used to the burn? A strong flume of gases came up from the shock of the sudden weight, and Naruto heard a strange whisper inside his mind as he began to cough up blood. Who's there? What is happening to me? Naruto brought up his arm to try and staunch the violent attack on his throat and lungs, but pulled up short. His need to inhale became stronger and he yanked at the rope that bound him. Freakin' strong rope. He sat for a moment, the major turmoil over, and became aware of a foreign presence that was tensed as it seemed to know he had caught on. This presence was well known and familiar to Naruto, it didn't belong here. Naruto. His voice was hesitant, and even though I knew it was him, the shock still came to my weakening body. I knew I had tensed involuntarily, and screaming wound in my side confirmed my assumption as it raged against my movements. I tried to speak with my voice. That voice? I know that voice. Yes, Naruto. It's me, Sasuke. I forced myself to pay attention. I thought I was dreaming last time I heard him, when she stabbed me. I didn't want to get my hopes all the way up and have them crushed. I tested my search brother's voice. Can you hear my thoughts? Yes. Is it easier on you? Genuine concern in his voice. It took me a second to imagine what he must be thinking of my recent living conditions. Yeah, it's probably not good to talk with my voice in the condition it's in, that, and she might hear me. At the thought of the witch that haunted me to no end, I felt the familiar chill freeze my blood momentarily. I hated fear. I felt Sasuke's shock at my resignation to the emotion as it sailed throughout my body. His voice became urgent and tight as he spoke. Naruto, where are you? We need to come and get you out of there. Desperation. I knew he would slap me if he could when I was not going to tell him the answer. So instead I just lifted my head slowly. I had no idea I had been hanging it, and looked around at my most recent form of hell. I knew he was scoffing at the image of the lava-filled cave. He always did hate cliches. Yeah, cavern great. But where are you? I braced myself but tried to tell him with the firmness my own voice once held. I'm not going to tell you, Sasuke. My inner voice sounded strange and alien to me. I could feel the familiar sense of his anger eating away at his calm attitude. Idiot. Do you want to stay there for an eternity? I cringed at the booming echo of his voice as the pain electrocuted me into resubmission of its grip. No, but you guys will end up being stuck here too. My inner voice now strained under the pressure of the sufferings of my body. Sasuke felt me and I tried to raise my tone a few levels. This lady can't keep me here forever. Right. There was a much deeper meaning to that statement. Just a few minutes earlier I had honestly considered just slipping away. Right, Naruto, but the way he said, right, I knew he knew what I had really meant by saying that she couldn't keep me here forever. She's planning on killing me. The silence itself was almost as painful as the wounds. Single quote, comma, single quote. I'm not a dumb kid anymore, Sasuke. The fox doesn't make me immortal, you know. I grew up too. You didn't expect me to stay the same stupid, pranking, obnoxious, and loud-mouthed. Your loudmouthness made up for my, I'm too good for the world, silence. I remained silent this time. His caring honesty to this assessment of my talkativeness caught me off guard. You did pranks to get attention and people called you stupid for them, but they never saw you fight like Kakashi. I missed him in a weird sort of way. Sakura, my first crush. And I did. I felt like I had been sucker punched in the gut, but he didn't stop, he kept up on the attack on my emotions. Your loud-mouthed attitude was your confidence and it boosted the team's morale through roof. No, it didn't. I had only received a second for my voice before he started again. Yeah, think back to when Ino had taken over Sakura's mind. She said your loud voice helped her fight Ino out, even if it was a tie in the end. You had influenced Naruto. This time the cut to my heart called for all my attention as torrents of memories returned to me and rejuvenating my pathetic state of being. The tears that I didn't know I would ever shed again slipped down my cheeks. I won't die here, Sasuke. I promise I won't die here, besides you haven't met Narelle. I smiled my one signature smile before he slipped away completely and left me alone in hell again. PACT. I want her head on a freaking slate. Kizua and MA stood as far away from Narelle as possible. The poor girl was having major mood swings between heart-wrenching sobbing and pain to unnatural rage and wanting to cause pain. Right now she was going through the latter. I will kill that slutty witch so slowly that she will die and keep screaming in her grave. Even though I will make sure that she never gets properly buried. She began to gesture to everyone and no one as her enraged lecture was slowly turning away from Taisha and towards her tortured lover. I will make sure she is eaten away by rats that live in a cement box, then I will torch the box cooking the rats inside and then I will blow it up until not even a molecule of it remains. Her eyes brightened as the whole room seemed drop below freezing and get heavy with killer intent. Kizua slowly made his way towards his infuriated sister knowing that the one word would diffuse the moment and hurt her at the same time to bring her back to a bit better judgment. He grabbed her shoulder and gasped as she turned her glare on him. Quickly regaining himself, he looked intently into her eyes and slowly released the breath he had been holding. Naruto. The look in her eyes was disintegrated and blew out like dust on the wind. The tears that filled her eyes shocked him at the emotion they revealed as they cleaned away all the masks that she wore over them and revealed her true pain. He wrapped his other arm around Narelle as he felt MA approach warily. Another one of our scouts thought they found something but, it too, vanished with the others. Kizua shot him a glare. Thank you, Master. It was a stiff formal way of telling Master to get out. The older man didn't hesitate, he'd let them have their moments but sooner or later they would have to help in the search. Unknown area. The rope was weaker now, I could feel it slipping out of the rock. This time it wasn't my shoulder popping out of place, it was the rope coming out of the rock. I snapped my arm to attention and began the pulsating tug of war with my bindings that I had been working at for hours now. I turned my mind from the pain and onto my friends that were waiting for me to make my big entrance and smile and tell them I was all right. For the most part it worked until I stopped tugging and returned my mind to what I was feeling. Breathe, breathe, inhale deeply, yank, pause, yank harder, pause shorter, yank harder. The rope tore free of the metal binds that held it to the walls and I gasped when my left arm froze me mid-fall. Slowly rising and testing my balance, I began to untie the second prison warden. The knot slipped and I braced my newly free hands to the hot rock to balance myself. Taisha would be returning soon to play with my wounds again and give them more friends, so I subtly made 2 clones and tied one into the ropes as I hid a few senbon into his mouth. The other followed me as I slipped into the surrounding darkness. We nodded my thanks to myself. My clone nodded back and mouthed, "Get out now." To me. We didn't hesitate to follow my orders. Slowly we made our way to the one door where I saw Taisha take my shirt and weapons. Entering the room we allowed my eyes to adjust to natural brightness of the room and slowly picking our way through the caches we found what we was looking for. The clone he me and slipping one arm through the sleeve before I froze in agony. My wounds were biting back as they rebuked me for agitating them. Mentally yelling back to my troubles I forced myself to hold back the moans and cries as the shirt covered the rest of my torso. My clone handed me my blades and I took the minute just to enjoy holding them again. Once I slipped them on, my clone changed to match what I looked like now and together we slipped back through the tunnels. Pausing at the entrance we heard the first clone taking our beating as Taisha laughing her icicle laugh that mingled throughout the large open cave. I stared at myself for a very long time. I heard the first clone spit the senbon into Taisha as she cried out and began to beat him harder. I looked into my own cerulean eyes before sprinting right past Taisha. Looking back long enough to see her shock as she watched my back getting smaller in the distance. I knew I didn't have much time, but I had enough to make it to the surface at least. I heard her scream in anger and I knew that the first clone had been dispatched. I pushed myself harder as my legs revolted against my wishes, but the light was so close and I burst through before I knew it had happened. Blinded temporarily, I knew that I had to try and keep moving or Taisha would catch me here and all would have been in vain. Forcing my suddenly dry eyes open, I became aware that we were in the middle lands between Suna and Konoha. I smiled to myself when the thought came, either way we run, we've got allies who would not hesitate to help us. Automatically I sprinted towards Konoha, my home, where I could find refuge so I could finally escape. I looked into my own cerulean eyes before sprinting right past Taisha, my home, where I could find refuge so I could finally escape. Do you see it, sensei? Ino had pulled everyone from their picnic to see a strange figure in the distance beyond the edge of the forest. When they finally got there, said figure practically ran Ino over. He barely moved in time, but it caused him to tumble into a tree. By the speed he had been going, that tree was probably not the best thing for him, but took the given time to rest his body. Panting hard, the dark-clad teen slowly began to rise before groaning long and hard as he sank back down, clutching his side. Nobody get closer to him. All eyes turned to Yamato, who had spoken, and Hinata disapproved. What if he's got a concussion or something? We need to help. No, Hinata. Shino got the glares now. He may not look like trouble, but this could all be an elaborate trap. You have no idea. A weak, hoarse voice came. Sakura pushed past her wary sensei and reached the tired teen. His mop blonde hair hung low over his eyes and stuck to his brow with sweat as his chest heaved up and down, never breaking a well-set rhythm. Sasuke was staring very intently at the stranger as though he could learn everything about him just by looking hard enough, either that or he recognized the stranger. Hey. Sakura rested her hand on his shoulder in her tender, caring way. Hey there, are you all right? When he didn't acknowledge her right away, Sasuke took the opportunity to pull her back. Sorry Sasuke, but I don't think you're not a medic. I know, you tell me all the time. I could be a medic with my YYYYOOOOUUUTHH. Everyone slowly turned the bored gazes on the strange teen who had his fists in the air and tears rolling on his cheeks. They had all heard his annoying cry all throughout Konoha whenever he returned from a mission, but a faint hoarse laugh came from the depleted figure, catching their attention. His panting had taken on a more pained and forced feeling rather than just desperation for air. It's been so long. Sakura supported him by his shoulder when he paused and slumped to the ground. I've actually missed that weird saying of yours, Lee. Sakura stepped back as he pulled his body from the earth with a groan. He slowly brought his head up and everyone backed away quickly as they saw the long mist face of Naruto watching their expressions intently. Kakashi was the first to react as he stepped forward and gazed into the now chiseled and formed face of his past student. Naruto. Ino stepped forward, shoving Kakashi into some bushes. Is this really you? She earned a tired smile before breaking down and embracing the pained assassin. Noticing how he tensed suddenly, she pulled back and studied him. I haven't exactly been in the best place for a while, Ino. He said, clutching at his side again, but it's so nice to finally see you all again after so long. The others formed a small circle with him as they slowly found their voices and cried out in joy at the finding of their missing friend. I stood completely still against my better judgment as I hid in the black ink of the cave's shadows. Slowly relaxing one leg at a time, I released all the pops in each of my lower joints before moving on to my arms, shoulders, and neck. The clone should have led her far away by now, leaving me in the perfect opportunity to go in the other direction and get appropriate medical help. Stepping carefully around pebbles and flecks of light, I made my way to the door. The blazing sun on the other side made itself pretty announced when I reached the cave opening. I paused for a moment to compensate the fluctuating pain in my side. It's probably infected. No matter, once Gaara realizes that it's me, he'll help. Slowly removing my hand from the arguing wound, I pushed myself farther into the desert towards Suna. Standing with them felt so good until Kiba stopped the group, whipped me around, and tore my black shirt off, revealing all the beatings that I had endured under the earth, along with the infected probing stab wound I had received the very first day. Most flinched and turned away while others covered their mouths and looked to me with sympathetic questioning looks. The only they got right away was me looking to the earth that had held me in its unforgiving grasp not a few hours earlier. I heard her step forward and I knew her medical eye was already filled with that concern that was so genuine that it would make anyone feel safe in her hands. Sakura slowly motioned me to a tree and helped me into a relaxed sitting position. Ordering Hinata to get water to help her clean the wounds, I snapped to attention. I caught the dear Hyuga's arm before she could leave the area. Sakura told me to sit back down and Hinata did the same when she noticed, up close, the real range of my wounds. Don't treat me, I said, avoiding the gazes. Excuse me, Sakura said with her irritated sass. Don't treat this body, I said, beating her tone and making them all step back. You need to get as far away from this body immediately. No one moved. Go. Why should we leave you? It's not like anyone is after. Choji's eyes grew wide and I sent up a thank you that he had caught on, then we definitely can't leave Naruto. Great. Look at yourself, man. You're in no condition to fight. An assassin trained at PACT is specifically ready to fight in any way, shape or form. They all stared at my firm expression, no matter what condition they are in or what the odds are for the mission. I forced myself to stand up to my full height, subconsciously aware that I had been leaning to try and suppress blood flow, allowing the blood to flow again from the wound. Naruto, Kakashi put his hands up in peaceful gesture, whatever training you have received it won't help you here. I had to laugh to cover up the cough of blood I'd been biting back. This is a clone. That stopped them. Someone is chasing after this clone to allow my real body to escape. I'm heading towards. I turned in time to stop a kunai from penetrating my spine, but not in time to stop the sword from impaling my throat. Blood gushed from my mouth, nose, and even some red tears trickled down my cheeks as a second kunai met my temple and brain. I heard Sakura scream as I felt myself falling towards the earth, puffing into the nothingness all of us clones are destined to when we are destroyed. Asuma. We all watched in shock as he suddenly whipped around with intense speed and snagged an unseen kunai out of the air. The breath we would have released returned to our lungs as a disturbingly pale woman was suddenly driving a long blade through Naruto's throat, causing him to expel a torrent of blood before she drove another kunai through his temple and poking through the other side of his skull. Naruto fell to the ground but never hit it. He was actually miles away when his clone dissipated. He was safe far away from this psychotic huntress. We were standing just feet away from her and her blood-stained body. I stood in shock for a full minute when I felt my last clone vanish. Taisha had found him and now she knew that I was not the one who ran by her at that moment. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on my clone's memories, all the information he had gathered and how far he had taken her. I froze again when I saw Ino's face. Then everyone flooded the memory. Like I was living in a nightmare I knew before seeing, that my clone had been killed up close by her, and she was now close to my dearest friends. I almost hesitated but one more thought drove me to a sprint. She was too close to me, friends. Shino. Our senseis got between us and the woman. Her beauty was the kind that was to be held at a distance and her smile was that of the devil himself. She dragged her bloody sword across her tongue and savored the taste. Arush, even when it's not really his blood it tastes magnificent. She turned to us and smiled at our defense. Ha ha. No, she smiled with one finger on her bottom lip, this is so cute. We looked to one another in confusion, this is what they all do. She began to walk forward, who else has good blood for me? Every wound on my being was making itself very much known to me as I closed the distance between me and Taisha's heart. If it took everything I had I would drive my own hand through that heart and end its dark existence. I tapped into my newer supply of demonic chakra and urged myself faster as the tree line came into view. The trees grew larger and larger until I was weaving past them at speeds that ninjas don't even dream of. An assassin is just a ninja with a lot more sharpening in the arts of killing, survival, and chakra. An assassin ninja with demonic chakra from the most powerful Biju should be unstoppable. But in the past Taisha has made herself known as an immovable object and that was confirmed by MA and several other assassins that I have spoken to at the academy. As small figures came into view I knew they didn't try destroying the immovable object. They may have thought of it, but they had never gone through with it. Taisha got closer and closer as I slowed to a silent predator's tread, allowing the killer intent to exhume. Friend says that all the time, from me and spread to embrace her and to tell her that her soul is now mine. My eyes burned with a penetrating dry blood red as I watched my prey smirk at my family. An animalistic growl rumbled through my chest and carved at my raw throat. She heard me, I wanted her to. Kakashi. We waited for her to take the final steps towards us before we would strike. Watching her leg in my peripheral, I saw it began to tense as if to step forward. All of us noticed and braced ourselves before the most chilling haunted growl entered the air. Kiba and Akamaru stirred with visible fear before turning to me with frightened eyes. He knew what it meant and decided to use it against the witch. That was a threat. Her black lifeless eyes flicked to his, but he held his ground well, a serious threat. She lifted her leg with a cocky smile and stepped it down closer to us. Another growl came, lower this time, seeming like it came from behind our group. Kiba turned towards the sounds and whined back. To our surprise, a strange coughing bark came in response before growling long and low at the woman. Her eyes strained to catch a glimpse of what was behind us, and slowly an eerily gentle smile came to dawn her lips when we felt the presence of another body nearby. Naruto, how nice of you to hand yourself over and witness the slaughter of these ninja. We all snapped our heads to see him. He was just like the clone, but his canines were bared, blackened claws clenched and relaxed, and his eyes no longer burned with the Biju's life but instead held his own bloodlust. He growled again and licked his right canine and took a few steps forward, and his eyes spoke of deadly promises for the woman whose reflection they held. Oh come now, my pretty pet, a snarl erupted from his throat as his eyes held more threats than before as he covered the distance until he was between the other senseis and me and her. Purely defensive. She stared into his craving glare with her own dead eyes. Something beyond them flickered though, as he began a continuous growl that ended with a violent intake, fear. Probably for the first time in her life since she became an assassin, she was finally feeling fear again. She took a step back for every step he took forward. Her eyes widened as she knew he registered her fear and was using it against her. Like father, like daughter, he pulled his fingerless gloves tighter against his hands. You both will die at my hands for what you have done to this world. She was shaking her head now and muttering to herself. I'm an innocent when it came to his work. That, he sneered, was a lie. She growled back in response to his own. Besides, he smirked, you and your father had no problem killing innocents. He reached back and pulled out his two blades with a satisfied schwink as the last bit of their length came from the hidden carrier. Fight or flight, Taisha. He smiled with a promise, both way you fell for it back at the cave and now, you're dead. Fight or flight, Taisha. He smiled with a promise, both ways you fell for it back at the cave and now, you're dead. Naruto made a simple hand sign and thick fog filled the forest around them, leaving a small clearing for the Konoha ninjas. Her eyes widened as a screech-like battle cry shredded the air and echoed through the surrounding land. Naruto had disappeared into the gloom around her and fear clutched at her mind. Forcing herself to focus, she readied her own chakra and began to make simple steps for her survival. I've never seen anything like this. You had to learn to watch your own back in my family. She caught the glimpse of the blonde's red eyes through the curtain that blinded her, but it disappeared with a long menacing growl. Taking deep breaths, she caught the eyes of the ninja she had planned to kill not 5 minutes ago. They look so secure. Do they not feel the chilling ice of his chakra? No, she jumped at the soft tone, they don't, Taisha. All eyes averted to brunette and white-haired duo emerging from behind Sasuke. Who are? Sasuke sidestepped to make room in their formation as the two kept closing the distance. To all of us it is like a warm embrace. Purple eyes met black pits. He will keep us safe, and no matter how he must do it, he will. Stop. Your heart. Taisha snapped upright and spun on her heel, gripped the hilt of the twin blades that were making their way to her throat. She felt her footing slip backwards as the bloodlust grew when his eyes got closer to hers. He sneered as she slid back farther into the fog. A sudden burst of adrenaline surged her forward and she managed to rip the blades from his hands and force Naruto back. You fool. She sprinted for the brunette who calmly held her gaze. She saw the ninja tense to protect the girl, but she muttered something and they stood down. Her blades sank deep through the shoulders and lungs of the blonde teen. Taisha smirked as she leapt back several paces and watched with satisfaction when he coughed the blood in his organs. That smirk faded as she heard him laugh something hollow and dark. You just don't get it, do you? She took the step back as he raised his head to give her a bloody smile. I don't care how barbaric I have to be to kill you. With a supple motion he sliced through the blades at their hilt and pulled them through his mangled body. His arms then tensed as his whole body coiled with animalistic technique, but his eyes returned to their natural blue. Last chance. Everyone gasped, leave now and I won't kill you. In simple response, Narelle was struck with a kunai through her leg. Screaming in pain as the poison began its trek into her bloodstream, the brunette crumpled like a doll that was thrown to the floor. At one glance from Naruto, Sakura began to treat the wound as her partner kept her head on his lap and the deep red returned to his glare. You don't scare me, Naruto. You're the one bleeding out and now her life and mine have a new search fate. If I live, she dies, said Blonde bared his fangs and crouched lower to the earth as she pointed to him as she spoke. Before the thoughts could put themselves into her mouth, his grip locked onto her arm and his foot on hers. She couldn't make a sound as she watched in pain and horror at her bones twist beneath the skin, and with a series of pops the socket tore through her elbow. The scream wretched from her throat and the onlookers stood on with wide eyes as she used her good arm to stab once more into his shoulders. Howling with pain, he leapt away, taking her arm with him with a horrible rip of the skin that barely held them together. Can't do again now, she panted as the stump that was her arm spurted blood onto the earth, painting crimson. Your mistake, his eyes matched the paint. I told you I don't care how I do it. In a flash his weight was again on her feet, except his jaw was what gripped her arm. Screaming at him, her instincts kicked in and she tried to pull away from him, but this aided in his purpose and he began to grind his sharpened teeth into her flesh. The screams grew into a new desperate tone as her arm tore beneath his strength. With one last sharp tug, her left arm freed itself of her shoulder and stayed in Naruto's jaws. Spitting the bloody appendage from his mouth, it landed with a heavy thump at her feet. A low moan turned his red spattered face towards his lover on the ground. Sakura, the search pink-haired medic, turned towards him, disguising her revulsion that was conflicting with logic. She shook her head. The only way is to kill her. She motioned with her chin towards the armless wretch, who responded with a maniacal laugh. Yes, Narelle. Sasuke and Sakura's eyes widened at the brunette's name. Squirm as death closes in. There is nothing to help you now. The ninja can't do anything. Your search brother's words are what you are holding onto, and your lover has no more use of his arms. Ha. Your death will be my new life, and from your filthy ashes my beauty will be reborn. More laughter shook the stiff air before being cut off by a choked gurgling noise. Naruto had leapt upon the witch and drove her into the forest, where he bit down harder at her throat and tugged his head violently with each clamp. She tried to push him away, but some force was driving him to do this. She saw a flash of the large bow he used to possess and then died as her throat was ripped from her neck and spat to the side. Sakura's POV. Her heart rate is getting weaker and weaker. I tried the very last thing I could think of, but nothing was working. I felt Sasuke's cool hands on the back of my neck and I took deep steadying breaths as my patient was falling away from this world. I sighed as I resigned in a pose of surrender and studied her. I brushed away some of her bangs. Narelle, huh? She turned to Sasuke and caught his wide eyes and in a flash understood their meaning. You're the one he was talking about. She was about our age, beautiful long brown hair, skin tone was closer to Naruto's natural tan and fair. Her eyes, when they were open, were a deep penetrating purple. By her outfit and tools she was in the same corporation that Naruto was in all these years. She was perfect for him. Sasuke's POV. Sakura stopped working. She had done every trick in the book and now had nothing left to do. Her gaze flickered across the unconscious form of the girl. My mind flickered back to the way Naruto looked at her. His eyes in that dark bloody gaze of the fox had changed to something different, more powerful. The bloodlust faded into something different when his eyes met hers, deep and passionate, protective. Movement caught my eye when the white-haired man raised his arm to provide a perch for a message falcon that had entered the area. A small package was attached to the bird's leg and inside was a close-range radio. Sasuke Uchiha. I held my ground when his critical gaze gave me an once-over. Kizur, he said quickly, expecting the question, as he cast a worried glance to the brunette. He caught me staring. What? I can't be worried about my sister. I broke my gaze. Motioning to the headpiece, what are you doing? I muttered stiffly as I slowly approached him. He glanced over to me and the look in his eyes ripped into me. Tears were filling them and spilled over when the sea blue locked onto his supposed sister. My master will want to know we found Naruto. He slipped on the small radio and pressed the button on the side, repeatedly speaking rapidly into the mouthpiece. A small gasp for air brought everyone's attention back to the girl. Narelle. His appearance shocked us all. Blood oozed from his mouth and all of his wounds were open once more, which probably contributed to his pale complexion, but it was his eyes that got us. They had changed in a matter of about 2 seconds of seeing the unconscious girl. It was like a black hole came into them and sucked all of the life from the pools of blue. He defied his body's condition and got to her on one knee and held her hand. His skin looked worse than hers. Naruto's POV. I felt cold, wet, sticky, and everything hurt. To move, to speak, to blink, to even breathe, but Narelle, my sweet Narelle, she was still unmoving. Had the witch lied? Was Narelle doomed to be dead as soon as the toxins entered her body? I shook my head to rid myself of the awful thoughts, but they clung too tightly and it hurt to move my head. I finally broke back through the trees and fog, desperately trying to brace myself for what I would see, and there she was. Unmoving. Narelle. My voice no longer sounded like me, it sounded as dead as I felt. The others turned to me, but I never saw their expressions that my imagination had already painted for me, but a more pressing matter was at hand. My love, she needed me now as much as I needed her. I went quickly over to her without looking at anyone else, all my pain forgotten just as long as I could keep her beside me. Holding her hand in my own, I saw the color difference and felt the slight warmth of her own skin. She stirred slightly as she struggled in the battle of consciousness. Why is she warmer than me? I finally relinquished the blockade that was holding back the pain and other feelings. I knew Kizua would catch me. He had always known about the mental wall that I would put to prevent any signs of weakness from showing during a battle. He had seen it enough to know what it looked like when I took it down, because he was there supporting me slowly down into the same position as Narelle. With a groan that I never would have imagined would have come from my throat, I felt my eyes glaze over. It is strange to describe, but it seemed like when you blow hot breath onto a cold piece of glass, you can still see your reflection but it is blurred. Kizua went from crystal clear to foggy glass as little spots danced around my field of vision. His face was near mine in a second and he was saying something, but the words were lost in some non-existent gust of wind. His face turns and eyes widen as a figure to my left sits up and holds her head. She mutters something to Kizua and looks to the others around, demanding an explanation. I touch her hand and she jumps. Slowly she turns that mystical gaze on me. I didn't care at this point that the expression wasn't her calm self. I just needed to see those eyes again before I fell. I was aware of myself saying one thing that at this point no longer made sense to me, but I think I scared everyone else. Is this what dying feels like? Third person. Narelle picked up her limp Naruto and made a dead sprint all the way to Konoha's walls. The others followed behind as she scaled the tall structure in 2 seconds flat and leapt from rooftop to rooftop into the hospital. The receptionist thought she had seen it all, but Narelle's entry was terribly sudden and she wasn't expecting it. Please help him. Narelle was frantic, and when she leaned close and heard no soft breathing, she almost fell apart. A calm nurse with a gurney came and placed Naruto on it gently and, like Narelle, took off at high speeds towards the waiting doctors. Time skipped 2 weeks. Narelle had come to the hospital every single day with a flower and a kiss on the cheek for Naruto. He couldn't say thank you or even acknowledge that he knew she was there and she didn't expect him to. The others went on missions to try to distract their minds from the fact that the close friend was in a pain-induced coma. But she refused to let him sit alone in a hospital. She would be there when he woke up and she would go with him through rehab and she would be with him till the world crumbled away beneath them. He was alive, and that was good enough for now. Time skipped 2 weeks. Naruto, can you hear me? They were all desperate. The doctor had just told them that if he stayed in a coma much longer, then there may be permanent damage to his body or worse. Narelle laying down next to the blonde, stroking hair away from his face in a way that only those in love can do properly. She had begun to talk to the young man a few days prior to the doctor's announcement, and he had begun to stir slightly at the sound of her voice. So she kept speaking to him, telling him stories, memories of her childhood, and many things that she had thought that she had forgotten long ago. The memory of how the flowers sent in her past home when her family went on trips, or how her father and mother were the ones who taught her how to channel her chakra, and how she taught her search brother. Little things would pop up in the one-way conversation, and every once in a while Naruto would show another hopeful sign. They were getting more frequent and Narelle didn't plan on stopping soon, but even though Naruto could hear her and tried to reach her, he was having flashbacks of his own. Naruto's mind. You're cold, colder, bit warmer, warmer, youre on fire. He paused in the darkness as he listened to her voice come to him like a guardian angel as Narelle told a story of a game she used to play with her mother when she was very young. A flash of light broke through as another memory drowned out her words and he focused on the wavering image. He saw the scraggly drunk man stare down at them in disgust until it flashed again, revealing Haku leaning over him in the woods. For some reason the image of Zabu's blade was burned into his mind and all the images would seem to focus on that one object. He didn't know why, but he felt like something was connected to the blade in his memories, his own two blades perhaps. An image of his familiar weapons came in. He could almost feel the hilts within his grasp and the warmth of the blade after the first time he tried running chakra down it. He saw the point and it focused on the points. Everything else faded into nothingness and the points alone remained. Little lone white triangular-shaped points. Why? The divided into 5 on each side. 5 left and 5 right. A new image came behind them. Like looking in a mirror, he saw his own image when he tapped into his demonic chakra. He had to be honest with himself. The image scared him. But his mind wasn't done. The image shifted and colors darkened and lightened until he could guess that he was looking at what he must have looked like when he staggered from the forest. Bloody, ragged, half dead. How could he remember this if he was himself? Who was putting this into his mind? He felt something come over him. Nausea. His eyes felt glued together as he slowly pulled them apart to see wide eyes all around. Kakashi caught his gaze and gave him that kind upside-down U that showed he was smiling underneath his mask. The nausea increased when he turned his head to the warm presence next to him and her penetrating eyes met his and didn't let go. Naruto. He tried for his classic smile but felt weak and limp. I'm still here, Narelle. She planted a gentle kiss on his nose and snuggled closer to him, all worry forgotten. He was awake, and that was good enough for now. Bored. That's all I felt. All of them knew I hated hospitals. And staying put. And reinforced confinement. I let out a sigh that hurt more than I let it show and stared up at the ceiling tiles and began counting. Again. Stupid wounds that won't. Freaking. Heal. I don't know how long I sat there, but I got up to 37 tiles before a nurse came in and stepped to one side to allow in visitors. I turned my head slowly as they appraised my current set of bandages. They finally met my gaze and gave me a small half-hearted smile. She made no sound as she stepped out of the group and sat down next to me. Hey sweetie, she kept her voice soft, how are you feeling? I'm fine. I used my loud voice that I know that they haven't heard in a very long time, except for the fact that I'm still here, of course. I graced them with my classic smile and started to sit up. They held out their hands as if to stop me or to get ready to help me if it hurt too much. Like I'd even show it, she started stroking my hair in a soft, gentle way that I have only allowed her to do. I knew the others were smiling when I let out a soft sigh and closed my eyes to enjoy the feeling of comfort that she was bringing. They must have left, however, because when I opened my eyes we were the only ones there, and I must have fallen asleep because it was dark. Just relax, she got closer and closer, I'll take care of you now. I felt a surge of warmth go through me and a series of teasing kisses added fuel to the fire. Naruto. I looked at her and her confused expression. Naruto, are you okay? The world was bright again and I wasn't alone with Narelle. I focused on her and nodded. Yeah, I've just been here too long. Or, we know you hate this but it's for your own good. She smiled and kissed me gently. We'll be back with some ramen around lunchtime. I watched as she followed the others out of my room. Her legs lightly hit the floor, her hips swayed in perfect rhythm. The door shut as did my eyes again, but my imagination took over from there. Dream. She walked in and closed the door slowly and stealthily made her way to me. She wasn't wearing much but the smile she wore told me that would change soon. Crawling onto my bed she fiddled with the zipper like a cat with a ball of yarn. She buried her head on my chest and I wrapped my arms around her and held her tightly. She started to kiss my stomach and I rubbed circles on her lower back. Every once in a while I would go lower and squeeze and receive a low moan from her. She would return the favor and get a moan from me. It was bliss. But not heaven. Reality. The smell of my favorite food drew me back to consciousness. I wasn't sure it was worth it, then again it was just a dream. I cracked my eyes open to be met by large purple eyes covering my whole field of vision. I let out a cry of surprise, earning a laugh from everyone. I knew that would work. Kizua was on a chair near my bed holding a cup of my beloved ramen. Here you go, Naruto. He held out the steaming cup as I sat up and took the chopsticks that Sasuke offered me. Raising it slowly to my nose, closing my eyes, I inhaled the scent deeply. The motions from the cup to my mouth were so ingrained that I had no need to reopen my eyes, but I had the feeling that a lot of eyes were on me. Opening them slowly, I slurped the noodles that were hanging down and met their smiling gazes. What? You've been released today. I froze. They knew what would happen now, and it did. The window was opened and I disappeared with all my gear before they could even register what to do. I finished the ramen on the roof and a new thought popped into my head. Slinking silently back to the window, I threw in a smoke grenade and waited for the surprised gasps from my comrades before I cupped my hand over Narelle's mouth. Don't try anything and you'll get out of here in one piece, beautiful. I knew she was smiling as we both made our way out the window and onto the clearing above the Hokage Memorial. Okay, Naruto-kun, you've got me here. Now what? I walked slowly towards her, getting no reaction until I wrapped my arms around her and pulling her close to me. Smiling, she wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me long and passionate. I could feel the emotion stir within me as I returned the love. I sat down and placed her on my lap without breaking the kiss, and she intertwined her fingers into my hair, pushed me into a reclined position. Somehow deepening the kiss, she unzipped my jacket and slipped her hands in. She rubbed my chest before pulling away for air. As we both panted, she rubbed my shoulder as I did small circles on her lower back before nibbling on her shoulder and neck. She moaned and a laugh came from the forest nearby, causing us both to snap into a battle-ready position. A few weeks in the hospital and now that you're out, you've got to compensate for the lost time. We both relaxed. We knew who it was. Hi MA. I sighed before walking over to him. I'm sure you found that last scene, oosh, entertaining. I rubbed the back of my head while stuttering through the sentence. Narelle came up and wrapped her arm around my waist. MA smiled and put his hands on our shoulders and breathed in deeply. Yes. His smile got wider. Yes, it was. He winked at me and vanished as quickly as he came, leaving us together again. I looked at her and she looked at me. We both smiled at each and knew it was only the beginning. We woke to warmth of the dawning sun upon our faces. I looked to her tender face and brushed some of her hair away. She smiled sweetly and kissed me on the nose. Good morning, Angel. Her smile grew. Last night was nice. More than nice. She traced circles on my bare chest, probably one of the best in my life. I smiled at her again and looked to the dawning sun. As the last of the fog began to clear, we found our clothes and walked hand in hand towards my favorite restaurant. We walked in a comfortable silence, and about halfway there I realized that none of my friends or authorities in Konoha knew that I was my leader's apprentice, or the assassin that was helping them through certain missions. Narelle must have realized that my mind went somewhere unpleasant because she squeezed my hand reassuringly and drifted closer to me. She glanced up innocently into my eyes and asked a million questions in the short time that I held her gaze. I regretted my weakness when I dropped that gaze because she stopped dead. Naruto. I stopped now and looked back but pretended to find something interesting behind her. Naruto Uzumaki. I scratched the back of my head. Look at me. I slowly made my eyes connect with hers and it almost hurt to stay there. Narelle she closed the gap between us and stroked some of my hair away and studied me carefully. What's wrong, sweetheart? Well, I was thinking, and she remained silent and allowed me to gather my thoughts. I haven't told anyone here that I'm, you know. Her eyes widened at the news and she wrapped her arms around my waist. Don't worry, Master told Kizure that he received the contact from the day we found you and that he would allow time for recovery and then come to get us. My eyes averted once more and I knew she was becoming more troubled. What is it? Well, we finally continued our trek, now that I'm back. You're not sure that you want to go back? Yeah, I mean this is my home, so, can I stay here and still do my work? Maybe your services will be purchased in the assassin hirings. The assassin hirings, if she had said something like that my first few days at PACT, then I would have just stared at her, but nowadays I knew what that was. A large convention of all of the assassins, no matter their rank, from every corporation that has allied with a certain villages where their services are purchased for either a certain amount of time or permanently if chosen, is gathered together for the cage, or those high in the chain of power, to choose. Yeah, but if the assassin is from the village and admits it willingly, can't they go back and serve for free? She raised her eyebrows. I didn't think you were actually paying attention when you were told about the assassin's hirings. Well, I had to get back to my home somehow, right? I flashed my classic smile, but she was the one who looked away this time. Without looking back, she turned her attention back to our goal, which was now closing in, and I knew I had hurt my lover. Upon entering Ichiraku's, I gave my usual glance to the manager, his name slips my mind. Help. And he nodded back to me and motioned for us to follow. We did as we were told and quietly made our way to a special back room where only the favored customers have access to. Placing our orders casually and then waiting became so awkward that I wrung my hands together under the table, a habit I usually never gave into, as I tried to find a way to repair the damage. Narelle, the words slipped my mind when her gaze met my own. My tongue was rubber and I could only look away. Our food arrived, but neither of us touched our chopsticks. I didn't mean that I was going through those years completely focused on nothing else but getting out. She raised a skeptical glare which struck me deeper than any blade. I saw you that day after the gym and stopped to talk. I thought I had a crush on a girl only one other time and it was nothing compared to the way I felt before I was dating you. Her expression changed again into the cute, thoughtful look she's taken a few times before. The only problem is, I glanced up at her as I folded my hands on the table. I still feel like that day when we first met whenever I look at you. She tried to keep her straight face, but I could see the blush coloring her face. My heart still races, my thoughts still get scrambled when your eyes meet mine, and when your fingers trace mine, or you play with my hair, or stroke my face, then I feel so relaxed that there is no other place I want to be. Naruto, I won't stay here if you aren't here too. Her eyes widened as she traced my own for the level of my sincerity. Slowly she stood, and for a split second I was worried that maybe she thought she had found some, but that disappeared as her mouth met mine and her tongue beckoned for entrance, which was quickly granted full access. She sat down and slid her slender form over my mind flashed back to last night where I rose to heaven and then back so many times with her. She stopped and we pulled away panting, and we both obviously had the same thoughts, which changed our meal to something way more romantic than it was thought to be. Sharing noodles from different meals, we cast lovesick glances between each other and finished our lunch in silent adoration. Narelle claimed that to be our first fight, and I had to laugh. They always say that the first fight is the worst. She smiled. I guess we're all set then. Her smile widened and she jabbed me in the ribs and I pushed her gently to the side. Before we knew it, she was already leaping from building to building with me in hot pursuit. I just about had her when a strangely shaped brown and white blur went by me, and next thing I knew I was caught in one thing I could never miss. A hug. From Rock Lee. The power of youth is so strong with you too, I just want to see RRRYYYYYYYY. I could hear Kiba and Hinata laughing above me, and finally they pulled him off. Ow. Lee, you've seen me around for a while now, why are you still tackling me? Because you've been gone for about 3.5 years now. He must have been hanging out with Yamato too much because he loomed. I must make up for all those years. Everyone's sweat dropped, and when Narelle popped up behind me and screamed, Naruto, I jumped through the air and clung to the side of the building next to the one they were standing on, panting heavily. Wow, not much gets you like this. In fact, I think this is a first. What happened? Hinata smiled and whispered in her ear what Lee had said, and Narelle's eyebrows shot up. She climbed the side and carefully pried me off the wall, but let me keep my distance from Lee. So you are the infamous Narelle. She blushed and nudged me in the ribs again. I guess I am. So how on earth did our dead last friend score you? I would have taken more serious offense if it wasn't Sasuke who said that as he and Sakura joined us. Narelle turned to with the most shocked expression I've ever seen anyone wear. You were a dead last ninja. What? Kizua found us somehow too. You. No possible way. He crossed his arms as if that would end this conversation. Yeah, they both gaped. I was the worst of the worst. Well, you weren't that bad, but you could have been better. Oh man, now we were having a party with all those from Konoha and Suna that I know on this poor guy's roof. Yes, I was bad. Awful. Not good. Sheesh, bury the ugly hatchet already. Narelle smiled towards my friends. He's definitely not dead last anymore. Amen, sis. This boy here, he put his hand on my shoulder, kicks serious butt. The others grew skeptical looks. He is our master's apprentice. That jogged some of them to more attentive glances. He is the assassin's apprentice THEEXD. The untouchable. Shikamaru now crossed his arms and raised one eyebrow and circled around me slowly. You certainly don't look it. He doesn't have his gear with him. He looks more intimidating with his gear on. Sasuke stepped forward. Okay, so you may have saved our butts in the forest once, but you certainly couldn't have gotten much better, right? I looked away and put my hands to the back of my head. No, they narrowed their eyes. Sakura grabbed me by the arm and began to drag me along. Where are we going? To see how far you have come. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.